The New York Giants topped the Detroit Lions 14-3 in a rain-soaked MetLife Stadium in the preseason opener. I've got some takeaways from that game, plus how some of the performances influence or may have influenced the 53-man roster decisions. That's coming your way next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all our written work, New York Giants on SI.com. And as always, welcome on in to my Blue Crew community members, to my everydayers, to my newcomers, and everybody in between. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And if you are watching on YouTube, please consider subscribing to the channel. Click the bell so that you are notified every time I post a new video. I've been trying to post new videos every day, not just the podcast, but shorts as well. And if you wouldn't mind, like the video. All of that helps tremendously and is appreciated. And on today's Locked On Giants podcast, the New York Giants delivered a convincing preseason win over the Detroit Lions, 14-3 in a rainy and ugly night at MetLife Stadium on Thursday night. But, while a lot of people are going to say, well, it was just preseason, it doesn't count. There was a lot to take away, both good and bad, from the showing by the Giants. So we're going to go over that in this show. And then a little later on in the program, I'm going to talk about how maybe some of the performances or lack thereof may have affected some of the upcoming roster decisions for the 53-man roster, which has to be made at the end of this month. So that's our agenda. Again, thank you so much for tuning into the program. All right, let's get to the good stuff. And there was a lot to like. I spoke all week long about how the Giants matched the physical intensity of the Lions, a problem that existed last year. The Giants just weren't on the same field or on the same page with the Lions in terms of the physicality, the intensity, the sense of urgency last year, and it showed. This year, totally different attitude by the Giants, one in which they matched the Lions toe for toe. All right. Now, I know over the years, one of the criticisms against the Giants is they've always, failed to play up to the level of their competition. And I just felt like in this game, even though it was just a preseason game, the Giants played above the level of competition against the Lions. In other words, they were the better team, the more intense team. I know you're going to say, Pat, it doesn't count. It's only preseason. But look, it sets the tone for what is to come. It builds confidence. It builds morale. It builds a lot of things that this team can take into the regular season in a few weeks. So don't be so quick to dismiss it because it's all important. That's why they have these games, right? So let's talk about some of the good things, some of the things that I liked that jumped out at me. And I think we've got to start with the running game. Now, for the longest time, ever since Saquon Barkley departed for the team that shall not be named, people were like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen with the Giants running game? They're going to be bad. They're not going to be part of the offense. Well, last night, the Giants rested Devin Singletary. He did not play, as did a lot of starters didn't play last night. But it was Eric Gray. It was Tyrone Tracy first, then Eric Gray, then Dante Miller in that order. And folks, all three of them looked really, really good. Really good. Dante Miller finished as the leading rusher, 12 carries for 63 yards, an average of 5.3 per carry. Eric Gray had 4 carries, 52 yards, including a 48-yard touchdown run. He actually had 2 touchdowns 2 rushing touchdowns in the game, one of the 48-yarder and the 1-yarder. And in the passing game, Eric Gray caught all 4 of his pass targets for 46 yards, an average of 11.5, which was the second highest on the team in this particular game. And then you had Dante, quote, Little Turbo Miller, who had the 63 yards on 12 carries. Tyrone Tracy. And then you had Tyrone Tracy, 5 carries, 26 yards. So when it was all said and done, the Giants finished with an average of 5.7 rushing yards on 27 carries, 155 yards, but you've got to take out the quarterback scrambles. So it came out to 141 yards of rushing offense on 21 carries just by the running backs specifically. So not bad. And, look, I'd be remiss if I didn't send kudos out to the offensive line, because the offensive line was doing a really good job. And again, the starters weren't playing. So this was the backup depth. And that's where there's some question marks regarding this Giants team. How is the depth going to shake out? So the backup depth did a really good job in the run game. Okay. I saw them stealing guys off. There were creases being open. And then with the speed and the quickness that the Giants had in the running backs, they were able to exploit those holes and pick up yardage to move the chain. So I think you had to feel really good about the New York Giants rushing game, which you knew was going to probably be featured heavily given the conditions of the weather. And they did not disappoint. So kudos to them. All right. A few other things that I thought really stood out. The pass rush. Now, again, second team pass rush against second team Lions offensive line. The Giants just, they got after them. And there were several guys that had some nice showings in this particular game. So again, there was no Thibodeau, there was no Burns, Dexter Lawrence didn't play. So there were several guys that had nice showings. So let me just quick get to the stat page here on the defense. I'll read off a few of you. I thought Carlos Basham, Boogie Basham, 4 tackles, 1 sack, 1 tackle for a loss, 1 quarterback hit, 2 pass breakups. Basham, if you remember last year when he was acquired via trade, he really didn't have a role. He really didn't fit in. And, I had a chance to talk to him for New York Giants on SI, and he talked about how he was kind of lost, that, he wasn't really sure where he fit in on the Giants defense last year and how much more comfortable he is this year on the Giants defense. All right. Another guy who had a day was Deontay Johnson, the inside linebacker. Now, folks, I've been saying this for a few days now. I would not be shocked if Deontay Johnson pushes, if not exceeds, Micah McFadden for the second starting inside linebacker role next to Bobby Okereke. All right. Deontay Johnson had 4 tackles, 1 sack. He had 2 tackles for a loss, 1 quarterback hit. So he was very active in his limited snaps. Very impressive showing there. All together, we talk about the pass rush, the coverage and whatnot. The Giants logged 4 sacks total for minus 22 yards. They had 8 tackles for a loss, which means they were getting into the backfield. They were disrupting things. So that looked good. 5 quarterback hits, 1 interception, plus 1 dropped interception. 1 interception, and 8 pass breakups on the night. So not a bad job by the Giants defense, which, obviously they rotated in different guys. There were a couple of starters on the defense. Deontay Banks did play on the defense, but, for the most part, it was second and third stringers, and they were just better than what the Lions put out on the field. And I think if you had to summarize it, you could say that the Giants just look so much more athletic, so much more quicker, just more cohesive. So a very, very positive start for the New York Giants. Now, not everything was great. So there were just a few tiny things that you sat there and you say, I got to see more. because maybe it was just a one-off. Maybe it's a sign of things to come. So I'm going to tell you what I saw that didn't kind of sit well with me right after this. Hey, Giant fans, passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's guaranteed fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. And with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. So go on, keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply, eBay's guaranteed fit, only available to U.S. customers. Hey, Giant fans, thank you for making the Locked On Giants podcast your first listen today. And now for your second listen, enjoy the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. Get daily insights into the best fantasy draft strategies so that you can win your league this season. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And again, thank you for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. A late night last night. Wanted to get this show out to you a little bit earlier, but made it a priority first thing this morning. So what didn't we like, or what didn't I like in the Giants 14-3 win over the Detroit Lions in the preseason opener? I've got to start off with the performance of backup quarterback Drew Lock. Now, Drew Lock, remember, was brought in because, the Giants brass, Joe Shane, the general manager, head coach Brian Daboll, they needed a guy. They felt that they needed a guy to come in the event that Daniel Jones couldn't play for whatever the reason, a guy that could go in and win them some games. Okay, Drew Lock has done it before, but in this particular game, I have to confess, folks, I didn't think Drew Lock looked good at all. I thought he looked lost. I questioned some of the decisions I saw him make. How do you miss Malik Neighbors? I mean, Malik Neighbors was getting wide open on the handful of plays that he was in, and not a single target his way. I just did not think Drew Lock had a good game. He didn't look comfortable. I mean, granted, there was a little bit of, turbulence as far as the protection goes, but I just was kind of surprised by the showing. I mean, Drew Lock has kind of been up and down, I think, these last few days in training camp. Now, that said, I thought Tommy DeVito looked fantastic. And, it's funny. We talk about how Drew Lock is locked in as at number two, the number two quarterback. I don't get why there's not a more of a competition there, to be honest with you. Why not consider Tommy DeVito for quarterback two? I never really understood that. I mean, last year, okay, Tommy DeVito was a rookie last year, and there were some parts of his game that you said, okay, it needs to develop a little bit more. He needs to play a little bit better in this area, that area. But he's worked at it. He's looked good in training camp. And I just feel like, the decision's already been made that it's going to be Jones as a starter, Lock as number two, and DeVito at number three. And by the way, I do think the Giants are going to carry three quarterbacks. I don't see how they can even think of trying to sneak DeVito onto the practice squad, because if they do that, he will get claimed off waivers. I'm pretty sure of that, right? If I had a mortgage, I'd bet on it. So I don't know. I mean, the backup quarterback spot, I don't want to say it's become muddied, because I don't think it has in their eyes, but to me, I thought DeVito was the better quarterback. Now, Locke did suffer a hip injury, had to come out of the game early. It's not serious, so he should be fine. Brian Daboll said that he was sore, which is the common statement after a game. But I thought Tommy DeVito was the better quarterback last night. I mean, you can agree, you can disagree. Doesn't, you're entitled to your opinion, but I feel that there should have been more of a competition there. And I question if there really is, because, they're paying Drew Lock $5 million, plus he's got, another $3 million or so in incentives. And they got DeVito on this cheap contract from his undrafted rookie free agent. I don't know, man. I just feel that that's something, that should have been open more. So, but it's not. So I'm just commenting on it, and the Giants can do what they want, obviously. Okay. What else didn't I like? Was just a smidge of sloppiness. I mean, I was disappointed in what I saw from Isaiah McKenzie as a returner. The new kickoff, dynamic kickoff, that was kind of weird to get used to. I'm still kind of trying to wrap my head around that. So that one's kind of a weird one for me. I'll get it eventually the more I watch it, obviously. But that one I was like, wait a minute, should he have done this? Should he have done that? Because there were some, there was a couple penalties, I think, on those dynamic kickoffs and whatnot. But so we'll take a look at that. I don't feel like, the Giants really settled the kickoff return role. They probably won't for a while. I thought the defensive line, they played well. Jordan Riley continues to really impress. I thought he had a really good game playing with the twos. Again, the pass protection, a little sloppy by the offensive lines, but not something that you could say, oh my gosh, we're in trouble. So kind of a mixed bag in that regard. But again, folks, I'll say it, not a whole lot not to like, probably much, much more to like. And moving forward, this is, there are teaching moments, as Brian Dable would say, but there was a lot to like in this game and a lot they can build on. But here's the thing now. The roster is, coming up. The 53-man cut down date is coming up, and decisions are going to have to be made. And there are still some decisions that I don't think were settled in one game. I wasn't really expecting them to be settled, but there are some that still need to be cleared up, So I'm going to go into those in the next segment. I'm going to go into my list of where there's still question marks coming up right after this. Hey, Giant fans, when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. They help you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but who might be open to the perfect role. 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours when they use LinkedIn. And did you know that LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier? They just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process quicker. So go on and find out why 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring by posting your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. This episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Do you ever find yourself comparing your life to those you see on social media? Comparison is the thief of joy, and it's so easy to envy other people's lives. It might look like they have it all together on their social media channel, but in reality, they probably don't. Therapy can help you focus on what you want to be instead of what others have, so that you can start living your best life. And if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. All you need to do is fill out a questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. And if you find that your assigned therapist isn't a match, switch at any time for no additional charge. So go on and stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. The Giants beating the Detroit Lions in the preseason opener, but more importantly, a lot of things to like out of this game. And one thing I forgot to mention, actually, Brian Daboll continued to call the plays, which we know he's going to do. I mean, come on, he hasn't announced that he's going to do it for the season, but we all know it's going to happen. And just, from what I can tell, just the whole like game day operation, how it went. I mean, you saw a very calmer Dable, um, who was still able to balance being engaged with what was going on in the sideline as opposed to having his face buried in a play card. And by the way, who didn't love that little plastic tent that he had to keep the play card dry? He created this little plastic tent rather than laminate it. So because he likes to write on his play calls, but I think that's going to work out pretty well for them. But anyway, let's talk about how what we saw in this game may or may not influence the 53-man roster decisions. Now, coming into this game, I had put out on New York Giants on SI a 53-man roster projection. And I had the Giants keeping 3 quarterbacks. And I still believe, especially after seeing, this first go round, that's what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to find a way to steal from another spot to accommodate a third quarterback. And, I think it just would behoove them to do that because, look, Daniel Jones, even though he's been healthy, he's looked good coming off the injury. I think, with this new rule that allows you to keep a third quarterback active and not have it count, I think it doesn't count against your inactive list. The guy has to be on the roster. So I think as the Giants maybe learned last year with all the injuries that they went through, you probably want to carry 3 so that you don't get caught shorthanded. And if nothing else, I suspect, having Locke have to leave the game early Thursday night and just having really DeVito. Now, Daniel Jones was dressed. He could have gone in there if he needed to, but they really didn't want to put him in there. So I am convinced more than ever that the Giants are going to keep 3 quarterbacks on the roster. All right. The running back situation. Now, coming in, I figured Tyrone Tracy was in the lead for the RB2 spot. Now I'm not so sure. I mean, Eric Gray made a case for that RB2 spot. Now, it's one game. We've got to see how the rest of it unfolds. But, he made a case for it. And, oh, by the way, I think the Giants keep 4 running backs on their roster. It'll be Singletary, Gray, Tracy, and I think Dante Miller makes it. So again, they're going to have to steal a spot someplace. And I think on my roster projection, and by the way, I'm going to do a roster prediction show coming up as we get a little closer. But I think on that roster projection that I did for New York Giants on SI, I had them only keeping 3 tight ends versus 4. And I think I I increased the receiver group. So, but again, I'm getting ahead of myself there. But so that's a decision, obviously, that just became a little bit muddied. Cornerback, I'm still not convinced that they have their CB2 on the roster. I just, look, that's a very young group, a lot of talent, but it's not refined yet. And I just feel like, a veteran is coming. And I didn't see anybody really pop out at me to say, hey, hello, I'm going to make this my own. So that's a position to keep an eye on, obviously. Offensive line, the backup center job. Greg Van Roten did not play in this game. Van Roten had been the backup center with John Michael Schmitz injured. Austin Schlottman took his share of reps. Didn't see anything that popped out to make me say, uh-oh, they're in trouble. But I'm going to be curious to see how the Giants approach this going forward this coming week in practice. They return to practice on Sunday, and then they get ready for their next preseason game, which is next Saturday in Houston. So I'm curious to see if that changes. Now, also on the broadcast, Joe Shane appeared in the television booth, and he said that he was hoping John Michael Schmitz would be back soon. Folks, if Schmitz isn't back this coming week, then they got to go to a plan B here. So I think it was important to get Schlottman some starting reps, even though he wasn't working with the starters per se. But, you just, at some point, you got to say, look, we brought in Van Roten to be one of the guards. Let's put him at guard, and let's see if Schlottman, who we signed to a 2-year contract, let's see if he can't be the guy. I mean, quite honestly haven't understood why they haven't had him in there all along, but they must see something different, and obviously we got to go with what they say. So that's another thing, certainly to keep an eye on. Otherwise, I think, defensive line, I'm convinced that DJ Davidson doesn't make the 53-man roster. He might be a practice squatter, but I don't know if he's going to make that roster. Ryder Anderson injured his hand or his wrist. I wasn't sure if it was the hand or the wrist. So we'll have to see how that injury works out. But I thought he had been playing well up until that point. So a lot of good competition, a lot of interesting decisions that have to be made. And again, I'm going to do a roster prediction show. I think I'm going to have Nick Filato come on with me, and we'll do a prediction show. Might even invite Coach Gene Clemens to come on as well. And we'll just kind of hash it out and figure out what we would do if we were doing a roster prediction show. So yeah, that'll be coming up. So that being said, overall, good start to the preseason for the Giants. Let's see if they can build on it. Let's see if they can keep it up. And above all, as far as I know, no major injuries to come out of the game, especially on a night when the grass or the turf was just absolutely slick and just miserable weather outside. So that was a positive as well. All right, guys, that's going to do it for me here on the Locked On Giants podcast. As always, thank you for tuning in, spending part of your day with me. We will be off on Saturday, and the Giants are back at practice on Sunday. The assistant coaches are supposed to be speaking. So you know the drill. Keep it here. We'll have more content for you here on the Locked On Giants podcast. Have a good one, everybody.